We'll literally show you the career that you've been itching, dying, wanting to see.
Time to experience the nooks and crannies of careers with your own to feed on.
K-Patch
with Cedric.
It is a Monday, it's the 9th of November, Firefighters Day, but Sky said he's still in for his video clip corner, where he's taken some footage of a certain theme we've dispatched him on, hence the name K-Patch, and he's joined us in the studio with his lovely lilac hoodie. How are you doing, Cedric?
What an intro. Yeah, I'm doing well. I feel very warm and toasty right now.
It's a beautiful hoodie. I remember, wasn't it just last week, maybe I was commenting, I'm glad you're still wearing the short sleeves, keeping it like t-shirt weather. And this week, you've not just got the hoodie, you've got the padded long jacket as well. We've gone 180, I suppose, is correct.
I mean, it did get really cold out of nowhere. It tends to do here.
Yeah, I mean, today's going to be chilly as well, only up to 10 degrees. I wasn't in Seoul yesterday. Was it pretty chilly over the weekend as well?
Yeah, it was about the same. Yeah, this past weekend was a little cold.
Okay, so we've flipped to winter weather. Although I'm looking at my weather app now and it says tomorrow it'll start to warm up again and we'll be getting 17 degrees Friday and Saturday. So it's all over the place. It's a bit topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
As was the whole election results in the States. I know you were glued to that. Are you happy there's an outcome, at least kind of officially?
Yes, I mean, I'm happy. I'm as happy as I can be, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Was that your week kind of consumed, just keeping your eyes on that?
It was. You know, I've never been so invested and consumed with politics. I mean, every 4 years when it comes to the major elections, I'm watching, but this time around was different. I don't know if it's because I'm older.
Yeah.
I tend to care a little bit more now, or because of the nature of the candidates.
I think it's both, right? It's just compounding that fact. Even I was glued when the results started coming in. What was it, Wednesday career time? Maybe a trickle of one or two. Mm-hmm. And then I was totally consumed for about 24 hours, and then there was just gridlock and nothing was happening. And I was just like, okay, I'm bored of this, and I'm not American, so it's okay. But it is going to affect world politics, so I hope it's a result for the greater good. Fingers crossed, right?
Hopefully.
I wonder how it affects firefighters. That's today's hashtag, 소방관.
Nice transition.
I wonder if you have any policy news from Biden on firefighters. I highly doubt it. But what do you think of firefighters, Cedric? Have you ever had to use the services of one?
Yeah, we have. I knew a family personally. Well, one of my friends growing up in my childhood, his dad was a firefighter in our local neighborhood. Yeah, so and we were pretty close. And we had to call him out to our house, not because of a fire, but I don't know how it is in other countries, but at least in North Carolina, they kind of serve as firefighters, but also EMS.
Yeah. What does EMS mean? Because someone posted that up. I think it's an American abbreviation.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I believe it's Emergency Medical Service.
Okay.
I believe.
So just for any kind of general emergency.
Sure. Like when you call an ambulance, sometimes the fire department will be called out because they're closer.
Oh, I see. Really? So they can give like first aid or something?
Like CPR, first aid, things like that. So we had to call them out once because of my grandmother, but everything was okay after. So I really commend them. I really have a high appreciation for firefighters.
That's lucky. Yeah, in the UK, I don't think that happens. Like, they come out for all sorts of emergencies, but not medical ones.
Sure.
Like, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So you might get a fire truck pull up on your doorstep when you've asked for an ambulance just because it was closer.
Right. I mean, well, they have different types of vehicles, I guess, so they'll kind of play it by ear depending on the call. But yeah, you might get a fire truck. Who knows?
That's interesting, isn't it? Mama Wolf also says, I've got two relatives who are firefighters. I would imagine if someone close to you was a firefighter, that would be quite nerve-wracking, wondering what they're doing every day in terms of safety and stuff like that, right? Goodness gracious. Keep on sending in your messages for firefighters. 소방관, as it is Firefighters Day here in Korea today, 119, November the 9th. That's our emergency number. It's the same in the States as in 911 for everything.
Yeah, for the police, the fire, And I believe that's it.
The ambulance,
The
like
ambulance,
emergency
yes,
kind of
yes.
thing. Yeah, because here we have 112, which is a separate number, I think, for like reporting crimes and stuff rather than emergencies of health and things like
Sure.
that. If I'm not mistaken, but I could be because I have never used those numbers. Knock on wood, I should say. Getting to today's theme, which we'd love you listeners to also send in photos and videos for via Kakao Talk. Our username there is Daily K. What are we going to take a look at?
Well, we're going to a newer neighborhood here in Seoul, and it's actually a Hanok Village, and it's called Eunpyeong Hanok Village.
Eunpyeong Hanok Village in Seoul.
In Seoul. Yes,
Okay.
it's farther northwest, but it's still within the city limits. And if you don't know what Hanok is, it is a traditional Korean architectural style. You've seen it if you watch any sort of drama, or if you visited Korea, you'll see it here and there.
And the palaces that have been made famous in certain Korean pop music videos and stuff, those are all in, I guess, a grandiose kind of Hanok style, you
Right.
could say, right? Yeah, and Eunpyeong really is like that kind of northern border there of Seoul. Then you go into kind of Goyangsi, which is where Ilsan is. So it's maybe not on the beaten tourist path that you take in with other attractions because it's quite isolated there.
Right.
On the back of Bukhansan, the mountain behind Gwanghwamun and Gyeongbokgung Palace. Okie dokie. So what are we going to see in your first video?
Well, so we're going to actually visit the residential neighborhood, and we'll see I guess you could say, the modernized version of Hanok architecture. And these are actually houses that people live in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okie dokie.
let's take a look.
So these are lived in, they do look like very new Hanoks.
Yeah, so this is a recent development.
Wow, I want to live there.
I do too. And here's the thing, it was so calm and peaceful.
It does look it, doesn't it, on the streets?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, little plants. I mean, it's very lived in, you know?
So, yeah, it's not like museums and stuff along there. It's
Sure.
just people's houses that we're looking at. So thank you for letting us film your houses from the outside, at least.
Yeah, you got a little garden next door and an empty lot.
Wow, that's amazing. I've seen many of the museum styles, but in terms of people just living here, what a dream.
Right.
You would imagine that they've got all the mod cons inside as well.
I would imagine so. I'm very curious to know what it looks like on the inside, but I
Wow.
think it's probably quite modernized.
So it's just a little village that is full of Hanoks that people live in.
Right in front of Bukhansan, the mountains.
And I saw on one of your shots in the background, there were some more modern buildings, it seemed, towards one end. Is it kind of like mixed a little bit?
Well, within the actual neighborhood, no, but I mean, the neighborhood is small, so you can see the modern buildings literally right outside the neighborhood.
Oh, I see. Okay, so for 1/4 of it, it's all Hanoks.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some like sky shots here on the internet, and yeah, you can see all the roofs in one particular area are all Hanok traditional roofs there.
Right.
And all the same modern architecture. And you're just free to like wander around in there because it's just, I guess, where any street is, you can just walk around if you want.
Yeah, I assume so. One, because, our writer dispatched us there. And then two, because there weren't any signs, but we were very respectful knowing that this is a residential neighborhood. And I didn't see any other tourists walking around because I think this is still somewhat of a hidden gem.
I could imagine. I mean, how did you get there? You say your rider dispatched you there, so it wasn't like straight out of a subway station or anything?
No, so you go to Yeoksinhae station.
Yeonsinhae, I think it is.
Yeonsinhae,
On
is
the
it?
Orange Line.
Yes, on the Orange Line,
Yeah.
sorry. And then you have to take a bus up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. So, yeah, it's not even super accessible, I suppose. Yeah, it's close to also Kupabal station on the Orange Line if you want to get there. Or like Cedric said, you can get from Yeonsinhae to there a taxi. It is right next to, I guess, the foot of the mountain as well. So what
Right.
a beautiful setting, isn't it?
It is absolutely gorgeous. And so I think if I could describe it in one word, it's charming.
Charming.
Just absolutely charming.
I wonder how expensive those places are, because a lot of them, they look like they're kind of 2-story, fairly sizable places to live as well, right?
Right. And these are individual houses. I mean, some of them might be connected, but I think they're mostly just individual houses.
Yeah, which in Seoul especially is quite rare, and you're going to be paying a lot of money for the land as well as the building itself.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming it's quite a wealthy neighborhood, and they're all in that same kind of color and style because it seems quite uniform.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of times we're used to seeing a little bit more color in the traditional hanok, but yeah, this one was more uniform in style.
Oh, wow. They've done a great job of making that, because some places I've seen the odd hanok, and I guess there are some places towards the right-hand side of Gyeongbokgung Palace where there's a couple of streets like that. But to see it as this established village is really fantastic. When was it built?
So this was built in 2014. And so, and fun fact, I mean, because everyone knows about Bukchon, Hanok Village.
That's the more famous one, isn't it?
Right. Tons of tourists and everyone walks around with hanboks there taking pictures. But that is, I guess, arguably the largest Hanok village in Seoul. This is the third largest Hanok village or neighborhood in Seoul.
Okay, fantastic. Because I've been down to the Jeonju Hanok village. That's quite famous as well. I've stayed in one of them because they have lots of little kind of rental properties along that strip. And that is wonderful, but they're not uniform down there. They're all kind of bric-a-brac, different styles and stuff. It still looks kind of quaint, but that, I would love to live there. If commuting's okay and the house prices aren't through the roof, literally, maybe I will think about retiring in that quadrant of the capital.
Absolutely.
We'd love anything that you've got on a traditional one-off house, it could be. Like in the UK and the US, I'm sure it's quite easy to go around a neighborhood and find an older building. Or if you can, a whole village like that with a video or photo, send them in to us via Kakao Talk. Our username there is Daily K, all one word. We'll be back after some Stella Jang, 아름다워, It's Beautiful. Oh, that brings us back for part 2 of K-Patch with Cedric in the studio, taking a look at Eunpyeong Hanok Village. Some beautiful pictures as well as Cedric's fantastic video available online with the mountain in the background. I'm really trying now to find some houses for sale online and struggling, but I'm assuming it's going to be well over like Shibok, which is, I don't know, $1 million, or close to $1 million, I suppose, for a house. Because in Seoul, it's an actual house rather than an apartment. I can find some apartments in the area that are much more than that, like 1.4 million. So I'm assuming there'd be more in demand as well. I'll update you if I can find anything, and we can start a fund to buy a place for Daily K. That would be nice to have a Daily K house, right?
That would be incredible.
We got some messages as well. Yeah, Sid T said, OMG, I'd like to buy a house out there. Iris DuPont saying the Hanok houses are beautiful and they do look quite expensive, especially being new builds as well. Yeah, because then you'll get the best of the old and the new, right? I'm sure like the underfloor heating and the air conditioning and stuff like that, as well as looking really nice and traditional.
Yeah, Sophie says it's fascinating. She loves it. It's well preserved. And she also says, I want to move to Korea right now. I already have ideas about living in Korea in those hanoks, and it's remarkable.
Yeah, well, do your best. I mean, it's not the most common place to live, despite being very traditional.
Definitely not.
Many people living in apartments or what we call like the villas, the smaller kind of flat kind of places, right? It is not a common thing. In fact, I don't think I have any friends that live in a hanok, unfortunately. Raul also saying, yeah, the Hanok village is always amazing. And it reminds me of Peter's See What I See participation on the ARIRANG TV station. Yeah, I took my kids to a Hanok village, but it was down in, I think it was Ansong, if I'm not mistaken, not too far from Seoul, maybe an hour and a half on the train. But there it was like old hanoks, really traditional ones. So they didn't look quite as polished, should we say, as these ones in Eunpyeong. I definitely think I prefer these city ones. Yeah,
for sure. Siska says, I didn't know this place was in Seoul. I only know Bukchon and Namsan Hanok Village. This one is a much more quiet place. And yes, definitely a lot more quiet. I've been to Bukchon several times. I haven't been to the Namsan Hanok Village, but yeah, I can definitely say this is probably the most quietest you'll find.
Would you say it compares favorably to Bukchon? Is Bukchon maybe worth more of a visit?
Well, I guess so in terms of like must-see places. But, if you have a little extra time, I would say Eunpyeong is worth the trip. But, plan to spend about 2 hours out of your day if you visit.
Like we say, it's quite out of the way compared to the other ones, which you could definitely go and visit other things. I mean, I guess you could go trekking along the Bukhansan mountain, and if you're a keen trekker, maybe get over the top and go down to Gyeongbokgung Palace, but that would take hours upon hours. You're quite a distance, it seems. Getting on to our second video then, Cedric, what are we going to see here?
Well, we're going to also see what else there is to do in this Hanok Village or neighborhood.
Okie dokie.
Well, let's watch.
Oh, that's quite an elevated view. Where are you?
So I'm in a cafe right outside of the village, actually. So cheating. But,
nice. That's okay, though.
Yeah, so we're walking around, and as you notice, there are different chain places that you might be familiar with.
In Hanok-style buildings.
Exactly.
Wow,
you've
that's so cool.
You've got a fitness center, and you've got different restaurants. I mean, it's almost just a normal place, just all covered in Hanok.
And just the convenience stores as well, they've kind of toned down their signs to be more fitting with the Hanoks as well.
Exactly. So
that's nice.
Just to give you a look on the inside, it looks like a regular convenience store, but it is covered in wood and made out of wood.
Oh, wow, yeah, you can see the bare, beams on the top and everything. And it's got a nice seating area outside as well.
Right. You've got your stoplights, parking lots, and this is the museum that I wanted to show you guys, but unfortunately it's closed until December.
Oh no! I wonder why that's still closed, because a lot of things have opened up again through COVID, but that's stayed shut.
Exactly. And there's also, you can rent hanboks there, which is the Korean traditional dress.
Oh, so they do encourage visitors, despite it being maybe a residential area.
Right, yeah. I think they're actually wanting more visitors to come out that way. Again, considering you're respectful. I mean, same thing as Bukjeon, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we went there and we were actually planning on renting the hanboks, which you could do it for free up to a certain time. Yeah, and walk around and shoot the videos, but unfortunately, due to COVID, for an indefinite amount of time, they are also restricting that.
Oh, that's closed down as well. That's quite a shame, isn't it? Yeah, you would have thought.
Yeah.
Now with COVID, we're at level 1 of this new 5-tier in Seoul. I'm guessing they're just saying better safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that museum as well looked really quite large, not like a small scale thing.
Right, and I think within the museum they talk about Hanok and the history of it, and they also talk a little bit about the Eunpyeong area. So unfortunately, we missed that, but that is there, and it will reopen next month.
Okie dokie. So just be a bit patient. I'm sure many of you can't get to Korea even at that point. You can even stay there, like there is accommodation?
Right. So if you apply in advance, you're actually able to book a stay, maybe a one-night stay in one of those Hanok-style homes.
They have some guest houses along there.
They do, yes. And so that is part of the experience. And also within some of the guest houses there or the Hanok places, you can also experience making traditional Korean handcrafts and other things.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
So again, due to COVID, I'm not sure how much of that is really going on now, but it is normally available.
Okay, so they are trying to encourage people to visit the area, not keep it as just a residential hub, I suppose. I'm sure they've discussed that with residents in advance, because otherwise you might not want to be there. But that's fantastic, isn't it? They're kind of opening it up as a tourist hub as well. And like you said, a big museum area, and they're trying to do their best to preserve, I guess, traditional Korean architecture, which, in some parts of Seoul, it will be tricky to see. Like, there's just skyscrapers, apartments, and things like this, right?
Right.
Like I said, have you ever stayed at Hanok, Cedric, at all?
I have not, no.
Oh, so when I went down to Jeonju, like the one thing I will say some people might find uncomfortable is sleeping on the floors. Like, there are some hanoks which have beds in as well, but just a lot of them stick to the ondol, underfloor heating, and then you just get a yol on top, like this mat. And yeah, my back does not agree with sleeping on one of those. Even two of those is not usually enough.
Right.
Are you all right floor sleeping?
I've slept on the floor for months at a time.
Oh, wow.
Here and there due to having a lack of funds.
Okay.
Maybe growing up in my 20s.
Yeah.
But I don't need to anymore, and I don't want to. But I would imagine that in these particular hanoks, especially the residential houses, I mean, it's probably up to whoever moves in. If they want to sleep on the floor, great. If they want to get a bed in there, great.
Yeah, that's totally fine with the modern hanoks for sure. And I know that some of the more traditional ones that I went to down, I'm pretty sure it was Ansong for See What I See on the TV side, they still do the old way of underfloor heating, which is lighting up a fire in the kitchen area, and then they've got the pipes that take the hot air all under the house. In those ones in Eunpyeong, I am pretty certain no one would have opted for that option, right?
Right.
My mum used to tell me there could be like, if there's a leak in the gases with like carbon monoxide and stuff, people would faint, and in the worst case, God forbid, even pass away. So they've gotten rid of that kind of system for most instances. An interesting trip within Seoul, despite being on the outskirts, you could maybe take in a trip to Goyang, I suppose, looking at the map here, and I will try to find some prices for anyone who's maybe really interested in perhaps investing in the area. We'll be back with a couple of photos and videos from our listeners. Any traditional houses from your neck of the woods, traditional villages, that would be great via Kakao Talk. Our username there is Daily K. This is Paul Kim's Every Day, Every Moment, 모든 날, 모든 순간. Of K-Patch was Cedric in the studio, and we're doing traditional Korean houses in the Eunpyeong Hanok Village. We've done a couple of those vids. You'll be able to see them on Instagram and up on YouTube as well to watch again. Just search out ARIRANG RADIO and hashtag Daily K, and we'll get some of your messages and then some of your photos and videos as well. Thanks for sending a few in. We've got this one from Iris saying that she loves to sleep on the floor, and I know many Korean people who love that feeling, especially in the winter as well. Sleeping on the floor when you've got that warm underfloor heating, you put down like a thick blanket, you allow it to warm up, then you crawl in there, and it's like the coziest thing on earth.
Yeah, it's so great.
It can be lovely. But Rising Lotus, when giving us the other side, saying, what, do you wake up with your butt on fire? Sometimes it can be too hot for me. Like on the weekend, I didn't sleep at home. I was at some accommodation. And I don't know if I can generalize this much, but I think Koreans in general do like a higher temperature in their homes at night time, well, especially a lot of the hotels that I've been at. And so the heating must have been set up to 24, 25 degrees. And when I'm sleeping, I want it about 18, a little bit fresh, and you crawl up under your duvet. But there, I had to take everything off that I could and just lie on the bed, and I thought I was going to burn up still.
Right, yeah, I'm with you, Peter, for sure. Kevin Leonard says, a week or so ago, I told you about Plymouth Plantation, and so now I'd like to introduce another living history museum, the Old Sturbridge Village, which recreates life in a typical rural New England town in the late 18th and early 19th century.
Oh.
It is open with appropriate distancing requirements, and at least pre-pandemic is popular with school groups.
Yeah, you did say, and you did send in photos. I think it was when we did the Donimun village, right? And it was looking like it was a village frozen in time and looked very much like a tourist thing more than just a live-in village. I wonder if there were people who were still allowed to live in those places. That would be interesting. Got a good question as well, and I want to ask you this as well, Cedric. I think Rising Lotus is asking himself, what is a traditional house in the US? What would constitute that, right? We've got the Hanok here. It's easy peasy in Korea to answer that.
Right. I was thinking about that the past couple of days, and I don't think you can really say there is a traditional style of housing. Now, there is colonial influence, and I think in the earlier, centuries, you had Western inspired from Europe.
Yeah.
that type of architecture. But then nowadays, there's just so many different types of architecture. I don't even know, what is considered American, what's considered, inspired from Paris or France or the UK.
Yeah, in Korea, it's so easy to say Hanok, and we've all got that similar picture in our minds. But even in the UK, which has a more, I guess, linear history than the US, if you could say that, it's hard to say what is the representative traditional house, because we've got housing and we still put this label on it today. Depending on what monarch was in power at the time it was built, you call it like a Georgian house or an Edwardian house, and they're all quite different. And people prefer to live in certain houses because sometimes they had higher ceilings, sometimes smaller rooms and bigger windows and whatnot. So it's hard to place your finger on it. It's great for Korea to have that kind of one unifying Hanok as the answer, I think. Tropic Girls on VLive saying that is absolutely stunning. There's so much culture, beauty, phenomenal architecture there in Eunpyeong. That place is amazing. What a great model for new villages as well. Yeah, as long as there's space, it would be nice to have these Hanoks, but in Seoul, where we have half the population if you include the surrounding metropolitan area, space is really at a premium, so that's why we go high rise. And you said you've noticed that there's English and Korean signage. It's nice they're catering for visitors. A lot of road signs now will have both, right? The English and the Korean. So I think you can rest assured with that side of things, Tropic Girl. We've got something to show from Zana, right?
Yeah, so Zana, she says, if you want to see the whole of Malaysia traditional houses, you can visit Mini Malaysia in Malacca. There are houses that represents each state.
Oh, so this is like a little small world kind of theme park area, I suppose.
Right, it looks like that's the case. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the houses differ by state, and you're showing us just a few of them. The Penang house, I know that Penang is a region there. We've got the Malacca house as well. And yeah, maybe to the untrained eye, they kind of look a little bit similar, but I'm sure they do have distinct differences as well. And you say, yeah, these are not your own photos. You have searched them on the internet. So thanks to the big G search engine. Well, thank you to you, Zana, for sending them in nonetheless. We've also got one here from Yin, which is also, I guess, from Malaysia. You say they are traditional houses at a village where the Chinese lived for over 60 years. Is this the same quarter that you sent in a week or two ago, saying that these are the places that are not really highlighted by the mainstream culture? But interesting to see the places they live, not so modern and high-tech, I suppose, but still have a kind of homely feel to them with all the red and gold decorations.
Right. That reminds me of a lot of homes in the South, actually, where I grew up, minus the Chinese ornaments and... but yeah.
Are there a lot of wood builds down there?
Yeah, especially in the countryside.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because in the UK, it's hard to find a wood build house, but I've seen it in many TV documentaries and shows in the US. Is that a fairly common thing then, like you said, maybe in the rural areas?
Yeah, when we're talking about cabin styles, yeah, it's definitely a lot in the rural areas, but there are a lot of houses made out of wood.
Yeah. As well. Just wood is the main structure.
Of course.
Yeah, in the UK, it's pretty much all bricks and cement or stone built.
Right.
So I was often thinking, are they sturdy enough to live in? But obviously, yeah, they seem to be.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example from Iris. She says, talking about old local houses, my house was built in 1877.
Wow.
Considered a Victorian farmhouse style.
Oh, so do you call it a Victorian house as well? Because Victoria was on the throne in the UK. Are there those kind of houses in some parts of the US?
Yeah, so you have a lot of different style houses, and they'll say Victorian, colonial style. Yeah, so many different styles.
That's beautiful, Iris.
Yeah, and when I was living in New Jersey, and I was actually dabbling in real estate for quite some time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was introduced to a lot of older houses that were built in 1900, late 1800s that have just been, rehabbed, every couple of decades.
I am always boasting about the UK having old houses like that, but even in the US, that, if we're talking about modern US history, has a shorter one, there are still houses like that. I know this fact because I do some British culture lectures, but the oldest lived-in house in the UK, I think it's from the 12th century. Like someone still lives there, and it's
That's
built
insane.
about 1,000 years ago.
That's insane.
It looks kind of like a castle, yeah. And there are many people, even my house is considered new and it's 100 years old, but here in Korea, it's much shorter, the kind of turnaround time with like rebuilding apartments and stuff.
Right.
Siska sent in this video as well. You said Indonesia is complicated. We don't have one traditional house like Korea with the hanok, yeah, like the US and the UK we've learned. We have so many traditional houses, one province with one type of house, which I can't even remember the name of all of them. This video is one traditional house in Sumatra, and it's one village on Samosir Island, North Sumatra. All houses are traditional ones. There's no modern architecture here. Look at the roofs.
Wow.
How do they make them so pointy? They almost look like ships or something.
Looks very, very dangerous.
Yeah, if you got caught on that point, but I guess you wouldn't be up that high. I wonder if there's like a meaning, a symbolism, or something practical to why they look like this, like sharp triangles at the front of the house for anyone who's not listening. Looks absolutely stunning though, and it seems like that's a tourist area as well for Indonesians to visit.
Yeah, I'd love to go there.
Yeah.
Looks pretty interesting.
Yes.
Very Instagrammable.
Seeing all the different types of housing that people have chosen to live in or chosen to make in different corners of the world is always interesting. We got one last post from Nur. I'm not sure if we can bring up her photos, but you said there's a Rungus Longhouse model in Sabah in Malaysia, and there are also some modernized versions of it, and I'm looking at them now. All wood builds up to 3 stories. Looks like it might tip over, but it seems pretty sturdy, and with hammocks to boot as well. Looks lovely. Thank you very much for sending those in, Noor. We're just getting them on the screen now. Some mosquito nets I see above the beds, probably essential for living in more like tropical areas. Nice stuff. Cedric, as always, thank you for coming in today. What's our theme next week?
So next week we're going to be heading to Tongin Market, which is in Seoul.
Okay.
And the fun part about that is I get to show you how to make your own lunchbox.
With the traditional
tokens.
coin token system.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. We'll see you again next Monday. Thank you.
See you next week.
Here's a request from Noor as well, who showed us those last photos. A Mamamoo song. You've asked for Mr. Ambiguous, Eme Moho.